the delegation I was with, there were a number of women who included skilled professionals who are familiar with dealing with extreme psychological and physical trauma, and they were able to have closed private sessions with the women who are suffering from extreme injuries and trauma in the camps. And that team also visited people who are in extreme situations as far as their health is concerned. And although I said that many of the women prefer not to discuss openly what has happened to them, some women have definitely decided to speak out. And so there was an example here of a woman who very generously, I feel, came to speak to our delegation, both men and women, about her situation. When the army attacked this woman's village, she was forced into a house with other women. And the troops then set fire to the house and burnt all of them to death except this one woman. And you can see it's not so obvious, but perhaps you can begin to see the outlines of the scarring on the side of her face, and she's deeply traumatized. Now, I was contacted by this woman, Sabina Yasmin, who is one of Bangladesh. She is the only female photojournalist in Bangladesh who has consistently followed the story of the Rohingya. And I was extremely touched. She contacted me. She knew that our delegation was there. And she said, "I'd like to offer my photographs to you if you can use them in any way." So I'm going to use a number of her pictures here. I want to be absolutely clear. These pictures are not necessarily the pictures of women who've suffered the extreme abuse, but it is highly likely that, as with almost all the people in the camps, they are witnesses. So, first, a few statistics. More than half of the people who are affected by this crisis are women and girls. And the human rights organization Human Rights Watch says that 80% of all the most recent arrivals in the camps are exclusively women and children. Mothers with newborn children have arrived without any fresh clothing, and pregnant women are malnourished, often after walking for days without food. United Nations workers have helped deliver 1,827 babies in the camps in the last 6 months, and have provided after-birth care, antenatal care for more than 51,000 Rohingya women. The United Nations organization, which is dedicated to the empowerment of women, which is called UN Women, says that almost every woman or girl who has fled here is either a survivor of or a witness to multiple incidents of sexual assault, rape, or gang rape. They have witnessed murder through mutilation or burning alive of a close family member or neighbor. Now this is a remarkably heroic woman. She is Ms. Yang Hee Lee. She's the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Myanmar. Her most recent report was in March, that's last month, and her report is written in the formal language of the United Nations. And I would like to share 2 sentences with you from her report. The Special Rapporteur notes credible allegations of widespread sexual violence committed by the Tatmadaw, the Myanmar army, and other security forces against women and girls, including gang rape involving multiple perpetrators. The Special Rapporteur listened to personal accounts from survivors and family witnesses describing women and girls killed after being raped, including burned alive in their homes, unable to escape while they were unconscious or bound. Now, you may remember I said that there is a lot of controversy about this. Now, Ms. Yang Hee Lee, who we just saw there, has been, although she represents the United Nations, has been banned from re-entering Myanmar. And before that, she faced hostile demonstrations in the streets, and Buddhist monks abused her using the most extreme language. And journalists inside Myanmar are facing harassment, even death threats, for independent reporting. 2 reporters from Reuters news agency, one of the main international news agencies, are now on trial for violating the country's Official Secrets Act because they were investigating a mass grave site. And in September last year, as the Rohingya were filmed crossing the border, the State Councillor of Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi, told President Erdogan of Turkey that a huge iceberg of misinformation had been created. The very next day, as journalists were inspecting the ruins of a village called Alel Tan Kwa, a local police officer told them the Rohingya burned their own homes and ran away. The Myanmar military, because of the international outcry, conducted its own investigation and reported that according to 2,817 people interviewed from 54 Rohingya villages, soldiers did not fire on innocent villagers, rape or commit sexual violence against women. And in February this year, a member of the parliament and a former general, U Tinai, said the government was not doing enough to tell the world that there is no such race as the Rohingya in Myanmar. Now, as I mentioned before, a startling feature of this tragedy has been the inflammatory speeches by Buddhists, including Buddhist monks. Now, as in so many other conflicts, they're a small minority, but they're a vociferous minority and they have a huge impact. They have branded supporters of the Rohingya people as our enemies. They have tried to disrupt international aid shipments to the Rohingya, and they have called the United Nations Refugee Agency a terrorist supporter group. Now, this catastrophe has not come out of nowhere. The Rohingya people not only include Muslims, but also Hindus. I met a Hindu priest in the camp. They include Christians. There is a particularly strong strand of Baptists among the Rohingya. And there are also quite possibly people who do not belong to any organized religion among them. And they have lived in Myanmar for generations, as I said earlier. But the repression, which is like apartheid, means they have been denied access to equal health care, to equal education, to equal employment, to religious worship, to equality of travel, to equality of family rights, and they have, as I said, been stripped of their citizenship. Now, a resistance group calling itself the Rohingya Salvation Army emerged. And last August, they attacked 30 government, police, and military posts. And in response, the government said that it needed to wipe out the threat of terrorism. And the day that they announced that, the government announced cleansing operations. Now, on this trip, I learned from a very highly placed, credible source that in fact 3 weeks before that announcement, Myanmar had already moved its military attack forces into place. And that is very much supported by the fact that within 2 weeks of launching these apparently spontaneous cleansing operations, nearly 40% of all Rohingya villages had been targeted by the army. Now, satellite footage. So this is the village of Mien Hlut on December 16, 2017. This is the satellite photography taken of that village on February 13, 2018. Look at what has happened. It's gone. And it didn't just stop in that initial wave. This is another village, Gwason village. This satellite picture was taken on January 7, 2018. 8 weeks later, February 16, 2018. This village has not only been burnt to the ground, they have brought in bulldozers and bulldozed it over. So this is what, in fact, has been happening to a staggering number of the Rohingyas' villages. Their existence is being obliterated. And that brings me to the question of genocide. Now, this wonderful person is Beth Lalich. She is a genocide historian and a specialist, therefore, in the study of genocide. She was a member of our delegation. She plays an important role in public education in one of the major genocide memorials and centers in the United States. And her expert opinion was that what the Rohingya are undergoing is a textbook case of genocide, where an indigenous community living in their own ancestral land is being systematically annihilated by the military, political, and religious establishment of Myanmar. You know, this kind of stuff does a lot of things to our nervous system. And instead of trying to pretend that that is not the case or try and push through it, actually the most powerful thing we can do is feel it. And the natural intelligence of our bodies and minds will support us. I invite you to join me in that so we can just feel exactly how we feel. And that will also help, I think, make our discussion about what we can do. I have some suggestions on that. And your questions all the more meaningful if we do that. So may I invite you in the spirit of a different way of working to just take a pause with me and just